Look, we all love a good deal, right? A bargain bin find, a two-for-one special, that warm, fuzzy feeling when you know you've absolutely fleeced the system. But here's the thing. Sometimes that bargain comes at a cost, and not just the, oh, I had to wait in line for 45 minutes kind of cost. I'm talking about a human cost. Because behind those shiny new phones, those trendy clothes, that electricity powering your very existence, there are factories. And some of them, let's just say, they make Dante's Inferno look like a day spa. Today we're diving headfirst into the most dangerous factories on Earth, the risks they pose, and the people who risk it all just to make ends meet. Buckle up, kids, it's about to get bleak. Let's address the elephant in the room, the radioactive elephant's foot, Chernobyl. The name alone sends shivers down your spine. In 1986, reactor number 4 had a meltdown of epic proportions. A nuclear meltdown so catastrophic, it makes you wonder if anyone had seen a safety video. The explosion ripped through the facility, spewing radioactive material far and wide. You might think, but Chernobyl was a power plant. And you'd be correct. But it was also a hive of industrial activity. Workers were woefully ill-equipped to handle a nuclear disaster. They wore cloth overalls and paper masks to deal with radioactive fallout. The aftermath was a downer. Pripyat became a ghost town overnight. Buildings abandoned, toys scattered, a post-apocalyptic time capsule. The exclusion zone remains uninhabitable to this day. Chernobyl is a stark reminder. Prioritize safety over production to avoid catastrophe. Let's be honest, we're all a little bit addicted to our gadgets. I mean, I'm looking at my phone more often than I look at my own reflection, and who can blame us? These things are incredible. But have you ever stopped to wonder who makes these marvels of modern technology? Well, chances are it's Foxconn. Now, if you haven't heard of Foxconn, consider yourself lucky. This company, a manufacturing behemoth, churns out electronics for some of the biggest names in tech. We're talking Apple, Sony, you name it, they've probably made it. But behind the sleek iPhones and PlayStation controllers lies a darker reality. See, Foxconn has a bit of a reputation, and by a bit of a reputation, I mean a truly appalling track record when it comes to worker treatment. We're talking grueling hours, unsafe working conditions, and a level of pressure that would make a diamond cry. Think about that the next time you're complaining about your boss asking you to work late. These folks are working themselves to the bone, all for wages that would make Oliver Twist ask for seconds. But here's the truly horrifying part: the suicides. Between 2010 and 2013, Foxconn experienced a wave of suicides among its workforce. Workers, driven to despair by their circumstances, were taking their own lives. It got so bad that Foxconn installed suicide nets around their facilities. You know, you've got a workplace culture problem when you have to literally net people in to stop them from jumping off the roof. Chapter 3, Rana Plaza, the true cost of fast fashion. Okay, fashionistas, this one's for you. We all love a good bargain, especially when it comes to clothes. But let's be real, that $5 t-shirt, it didn't magically appear on the rack. Someone somewhere toiled away to make that for you, and in many cases that somewhere is a place like Rana Plaza. Now, if you haven't heard of Rana Plaza, I wouldn't blame you. It's not exactly a name that rolls off the tongue, but trust me, this building, located in Bangladesh, became infamous for all the wrong reasons. Back in 2013, Rana Plaza, home to several garment factories, collapsed. And I'm not talking about a little oopsie-daisy, a few bricks fell over kind of collapse. I'm talking a full-on catastrophic pancake collapse that reduced the entire structure to a pile of rubble. Over 1,100 people lost their lives that day. Think about that number for a second. 1,100 lives snuffed out in an instant. Thousands more were injured, many permanently disabled. And for what? So we could save a few bucks on a new wardrobe? The truly gut-wrenching part? This tragedy was entirely preventable. See, cracks had been discovered in the building days before the collapse. But did the factory owners evacuate? Did they prioritize the safety of their workers? Reader, I wouldn't be telling you this story if they had. Workers were ordered back into the building, forced to choose between their safety and their livelihoods. Many of them, desperate to provide for their families, felt they had no choice but to obey. Chapter 4. DuPont, a chemical cocktail of disaster. Chemicals. They're everywhere. In our food, our water, the air we breathe. And while some chemicals are perfectly fine, even essential, others, well, let's just say they're not exactly doing wonders for our health. And when it comes to chemical companies, few have a rap sheet quite like DuPont. Now, DuPont has been around for ages. They've got their fingers in all sorts of pies, from agriculture to electronics, but it's their chemical plants that really get my goat. See, DuPont has a bit of a history, and by history I mean a long and storied tradition of explosions, leaks and environmental violations that would make even the most hardened EPA official break out in hives. We're talking about plants releasing toxic substances into the air and water, poisoning both workers and nearby communities. We're talking about explosions that level entire neighborhoods, leaving behind a legacy of illness and environmental devastation. And the worst part, DuPont has a knack for dodging responsibility, like Neo dodging bullets in The Matrix. They've paid out millions, even billions, in settlements over the years. But for the people whose lives have been irrevocably damaged, no amount of money can ever truly compensate for what they've lost. Chapter 5. China's coal mines buried alive. Coal, the bedrock of modern industry, the fuel that powered the Industrial Revolution, and let's be honest, a right pain in the arse when it comes to, the whole global warming thing. But while most of the developed world is trying to wean itself off this particularly dirty energy source, China, well, they're still hooked, and fueling that addiction are thousands upon thousands of coal miners toiling away in some of the most dangerous conditions imaginable. See, coal mining, even when done by the book, is inherently risky. You're essentially digging around in the Earth's basement, hoping you don't stumble across a methane leak or a grumpy tectonic plate. But in China, well, let's just say they're not exactly known for their stringent safety regulations. We're talking about mines collapsing with alarming regularity, trapping miners underground with all the hope of a chocolate teapot in a heat wave. We're talking about explosions that make Michael Bay movies look like a day at the library. And the truly tragic part? Many of these deaths are entirely preventable. Proper safety equipment, adequate training, and, just a smidgen of respect for human life could go a long way. But when you're churning out coal as fast as humanly possible to keep the lights on in a nation of over 1 billion people, well, something's got to give. And sadly, more often than not, that something is worker safety. Outro: the human cost of progress. So there you have it. A whirlwind tour of some of the most dangerous factories on Earth. And if you're feeling a little bit nauseous right now, well, frankly, you should be. Because these stories, as horrifying as they are just a tiny glimpse into a much larger problem. The truth is, every day, millions of people around the world clock into jobs that could potentially kill them. Jobs that expose them to toxic chemicals, unsafe machinery, and working conditions that would make a sweatshop look like a 5-star hotel. And for what? So we can have cheaper clothes, shinier gadgets, and a constant supply of electricity. Look, I'm not saying we need to all go live in the woods and knit our own clothes. Progress is important, and industry is a vital part of our world. But we need to start asking ourselves some tough questions. What is the true cost of the goods we consume? Who is paying the price for our insatiable appetite for cheap stuff? Because as consumers, we hold immense power. We can choose to support companies that prioritize worker safety and ethical practices. We can demand transparency in supply chains and hold corporations accountable for their actions. So, the next time you're about to click buy on that ridiculously cheap sweater, take a moment to think about the hands that made it. Because behind every product, there's a story.